Dad, you're fired. Those three words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. My son Brandon stood at the head of the conference table, his eyes cold as January ice. I'm 70 years old, and I'd spent the last 11 years building Bright Path solutions for him. 11 years of 16-hour days, missed dinners, and sacrifice. And now, in front of 15 people I'd hired and trained, he was throwing me out like yesterday's garbage. Let me back up. My name is Henry Collins, and 3 days ago, I walked into that conference room thinking it was just another Monday meeting. The projector hummed softly overhead, casting numbers onto the white wall. Bright Path Solutions, our software consulting firm in downtown Chicago, had been my life's work. Well, mine and my late wife Ellen's. We founded it back in 1995 when Brandon was just 5 years old. Ellen passed 3 years ago from lung cancer, and I'd promised her I'd take care of our boy. I'd keep the company strong for him. But that morning, something felt wrong. Rachel Thornton, our chief financial officer, sat beside Brandon with a thin smile on her face. She was 35, sharp as a blade, and always wore those expensive Tiffany earrings that caught the light. I'd never fully trusted her, not since Brandon brought her on 2 years back. Brandon cleared his throat. "Dad, we need to talk about the Miller contract." His voice had an edge I didn't recognize. The Miller contract was a $2 million deal with a firm out of Denver. I'd reviewed the paperwork the week before, and something hadn't sat right. The invoices looked off, the numbers too clean, too convenient. When I'd asked questions, Brandon had brushed me aside. I leaned forward, my knuckles white around the folder in front of me. "Son, I told you, that contract has red flags all over it. The billing structure doesn't make sense. We need to audit it before we sign." My voice was steady, but inside my gut was churning. I'd built this company on honesty. Ellen and I had always said, "Your word is your bond." Rachel spoke up, her tone smooth as silk. "Henry, with all due respect, your approach is outdated. We need agility in today's market, not excessive caution." She glanced at Brandon, and something passed between them, something I couldn't quite name. I looked around the table. These were people I'd mentored. Diane Foster, who I'd promoted to senior consultant 3 years ago. Mike from accounting, who I'd hired fresh out of college. They all stared at their laptops, refusing to meet my eyes. The silence pressed down like a weight. Brandon stood up, adjusting his Rolex. That's when he said it. "Dad, this isn't working anymore. You're stuck in the past. The company needs to move forward, and you're holding us back." His jaw tightened. "You're fired. Effective immediately." The room went dead silent. Someone gasped. I think it was Diane, but no one spoke. I sat there, my chest tight, my mind reeling. Fired. My own son was firing me. Rachel's lips curled into the faintest smile, and I knew this had been planned. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The folder trembled in my grip, but I kept my voice level. "You forget who built this, Brandon. You forget what your mother and I sacrificed." He didn't blink. "Progress doesn't care about sacrifices, old man. Pack your things." I walked out of that conference room, my reflection ghostly in the glass walls. In the hallway, people turned away. 30 years in business, and this was how it ended. I went to my office, the one with Ellen's photo on the desk, her smile forever frozen in happier times. I slipped the photo into my coat pocket, leaving behind the awards and plaques. As I passed Rachel's desk, I noticed a folder marked confidential. My hand brushed it, and a thought flickered. What were they hiding? I stopped at the elevator. Through the glass, I could see Brandon and Rachel in the conference room, their heads close together. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw him say, "Now the old man can't stop us." Rachel nodded, her hand on his arm. Too familiar, too intimate. The elevator doors closed, and I stared at my reflection. They thought I was finished, but they didn't know what I knew. 4 weeks ago, I'd seen Brandon's safe, the one behind that ugly abstract painting in his office. I'd seen him shove a red file inside, his hands shaking. The label had read, "Confidential, RWT, offshore." I didn't know what it meant then, but I was damn sure going to find out now. I walked to my truck in the parking garage, my box of belongings soaked from the rain. My hands shook as I gripped the wheel. Brandon thought he'd won, but I'd seen that safe, and I knew what was inside could destroy him. The house was too quiet. I sat in my living room, the rain tapping against the windows of my 3-bedroom home in the suburbs of Chicago. The box of my belongings sat on the coffee table, a pitiful collection of 30 years reduced to cardboard. Ellen's photo was in my hand now, her smile looking up at me. God, I missed her. 3 years gone, and the pain was still fresh as an open wound. My mind drifted back to that hospital room. It was a cold March evening, the kind where the wind cuts right through you. Ellen lay in that bed at Northwestern Memorial, her body frail from stage 4 lung cancer. The machines beeped steadily, counting down the time we had left. I'd held her hand, her skin paper thin, her grip weak but determined.
"Henry," she'd whispered, her voice barely audible. "Promise me something." I'd leaned in close, my throat tight. "Anything, honey, anything." Her eyes, still sharp despite the morphine, locked onto mine. "Don't let anyone steal your dignity. Not ever. Not even our son." I'd been confused then. Why would she say that about Brandon? But I'd promised. "Of course, Ellen, of course." She'd pointed to her nightstand with a trembling finger. "Bottom drawer, there's a letter, sealed. Only open it if you need it." I'd nodded, not understanding, but I'd taken that sealed envelope home. It had sat in her memory box for 3 years, unopened, until tonight. I stood up, my knees creaking, and walked to the hallway closet. The memory box was on the top shelf, a simple wooden chest Ellen had bought at a craft fair in 1987. I pulled it down, dust floating in the lamplight. Inside were her things, her reading glasses, the scarf she wore every Sunday to church, our wedding photo from 1978, both of us so young, so full of hope. And there, at the bottom, the envelope, my name written in her careful handwriting. My hands shook as I broke the seal. The paper inside was thick, official looking. I unfolded it slowly, and Ellen's words filled the page. "My dearest Henry, if you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. I pray you never need to open this, but a wife knows things. I've seen changes in Brandon these last few years, things that worry me. If he has betrayed you, if he has turned his back on everything we taught him, then you must fight back. Don't let him destroy what we built together." Enclosed are copies of the company incorporation documents. You'll see that I own 50% of Bright Path Solutions. We founded it together, you and I, back in 1995. My shares are yours now, through my will. Brandon cannot legally fire you without a full board vote, and he doesn't have the votes. He's broken the law, Henry. This gives you grounds to fight. And one more thing. I've seen him with that woman, Rachel. I don't trust her. If she's involved, look deeper. People who smile that much are usually hiding something. You're stronger than you think, my love. Fight for what's right. Fight for our legacy. I'll be watching over you. All my love, Ellen. I sat back, the letter trembling in my hands. She'd known. Somehow, Ellen had known this day might come. Clipped to the letter were legal documents, incorporation papers from 1995, signed by both of us. Ellen Collins, 50% owner. Henry Collins, 50% owner. And beneath that, her last will and testament, leaving all her shares to me.
Brandon had no legal right to fire me, none. The realization hit like lightning. But why had he done it? What was he hiding? Then I remembered. 4 weeks ago, I'd walked past Brandon's office late one evening. The door was cracked open, and I'd seen him at his safe, the one behind that gaudy abstract painting he'd hung last year. He was shoving a red file inside, his movements jerky, nervous. I'd only caught a glimpse of the label. Confidential, RWT Offshore. Offshore. My stomach turned. That meant money hidden overseas. Tax evasion, maybe worse. And RWT. Rachel's initials were RT. Rachel Thornton. What did the W stand for? It didn't matter. What mattered was that file. It was evidence of whatever they were hiding. Evidence that could bury them both. I stood up, walking to the mantel where Ellen's urn sat beside her photo. I picked up the photo, my thumb brushing her face. "I'll make this right, honey," I whispered. "I promise you, they won't get away with this." Tomorrow was Thursday. The office would be quiet. I still had my old master key, the one from when I was co-founder. They'd never thought to ask for it back. Rookie mistake. I'd go in late, after hours. I'd open that safe. I'd take that file. And then I'd make my son answer for what he'd done. I looked at Ellen's photo one last time, her eyes steady and sure. Tomorrow night, I'd go back to that office, one last time. Thursday night, 11:47. I sat in my 1987 Ford pickup truck across the street from Bright Path Solutions, watching the windows on the 14th floor. Most were dark now, just a few lights from the cleaning crew. My heart hammered against my ribs like it hadn't since my Navy days, 45 years ago. The master key was cold in my palm, its metal edge biting into my skin. This was it. No turning back. I'd waited until late for a reason. Walt Johnson worked the night security shift on Thursdays. Walt was 68, a Vietnam vet like me, and we'd shared more than a few coffees over the years. He was a good man, the kind who understood loyalty. I was betting my freedom on that loyalty tonight. I crossed the street, my coat collar up against the November wind. The back entrance was around the corner, away from the main lobby cameras. My breath came out in white puffs. The key slid into the lock, and for a terrible moment I thought they'd changed it. Then, click, the door opened. The hallway was dim, lit only by emergency exit signs casting everything in red. My shoes squeaked softly on the tile floor. I could hear my own breathing, too loud in the silence. The elevator was too risky. I took the stairs, counting each floor. My knees protested, old age making itself known, but I pushed through. By floor 14, I was breathing hard. I cracked open the stairwell door. The office floor stretched out before me, a maze of cubicles and glass-walled offices. And there, at the security desk near the elevators, sat Walt. He was reading a paperback, his coffee steaming beside him. He looked up as I approached, and our eyes met. Walt's face registered surprise, then understanding. He glanced at the security monitors, then back at me. Without a word, he reached over and flipped a switch. The monitors went dark. 15 minutes, he said quietly, tapping his watch. "That's all I can give you, Mr. Collins." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Walt had just risked his job for me. I moved quickly now, weaving through the cubicles toward Brandon's corner office. The door was unlocked, arrogant in its confidence. Inside, the space smelled like my son's expensive cologne, the kind that cost $200 a bottle. The abstract painting hung on the wall, its swirls of color even uglier in the dim light from the windows. I lifted it off carefully. Behind it, the safe stared back at me, its digital keypad glowing faintly. My fingers hovered over the numbers. Brandon was smart, but he was also sentimental in ways he didn't realize. I punched in 0815. Ellen's birthday, August 15th. The safe beeped once, twice, then clicked open. Inside was a red accordion file, thick with papers. I pulled it out, my hands trembling. The label read, RWT Offshore Holdings, Confidential. I opened it. The first page made my blood run cold. Bright Path Solutions, Tax Evasion Scheme, Fiscal Years 2019 to 2023. Total concealed revenue, $8.5 million. I flipped through the pages, my anger building with each one. Shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Miller Holdings LLC, Thornton Capital Limited, RWT Consulting Services registered in the British Virgin Islands, fake invoices, inflated expenses, money laundered through 3 layers of offshore accounts. And there, on every page, 2 signatures, Brandon Collins, Rachel Thornton. But there was more. Tucked between the financial documents were printed emails. I pulled one out, dated 6 months ago. The subject line read, "After hours." I scanned the text, my stomach turning. Brandon's words to Rachel, "Can't wait till we're free of him, baby. Tonight, your place?" Her response, "Yes, bring champagne. We'll celebrate properly." They weren't just business partners, they were lovers. And they'd been planning to get rid of me for months. I heard it then, footsteps in the hallway. My heart stopped. I shoved the file back, my hands fumbling. The footsteps grew closer. I dove under Brandon's desk, my knees scraping the carpet, my breath held tight. The door opened. Light spilled across the floor.
"Buenas noches," a woman's voice called out. The cleaning lady, her cart rattling as she emptied the trash bin. She hummed softly, some Spanish tune, oblivious to the old man hiding 3 feet away. Sweat rolled down my back. Ellen's photo pressed against my chest in my shirt pocket, a small comfort. After what felt like an hour but was probably 2 minutes, she left. I waited, counting to 60, then crawled out. My phone. I'd nearly forgotten. I pulled it out and photographed every page of that file. The flash seemed impossibly bright in the dark office. 37 photos total. Evidence of fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy. Enough to destroy them both. I put the file back exactly as I'd found it, closed the safe, and rehung the painting. My hands were steadier now, purpose replacing fear. I slipped out of the office, past the cubicles, back to where Walt sat. The monitors flickered back to life as I approached. Walt looked up from his book. "I didn't see nothing, Mr. Collins," he said, his voice firm. "I owe you for hiring my grandson last year. We're even now." I shook his hand, unable to find words. Some debts can't be repaid with money. I took the stairs down, my legs shaking from adrenaline. The back door opened to the cold night air, and I breathed deep, free. I'd done it. I had the evidence. Brandon and Rachel had no idea their world was about to cave in. I walked toward my truck, parked a block away. That's when I saw it. A black sedan idling at the corner, its windows tinted dark. As I approached my truck, the sedan's engine revved softly. Someone was watching. My hand tightened on my keys. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and pulled out. In my rearview mirror, the black sedan followed. The next morning, I sat in a corner booth at Lou Mitchell's Diner on West Jackson Boulevard. If you've lived in Chicago long enough, you know Lou Mitchell's. It's been serving breakfast since 1923, the kind of place where the coffee's always hot and the waitresses call you honey. I'd chosen it because it was public, crowded, and nobody would think twice about 2 old men talking over eggs and toast. Frank Morrison slid into the booth across from me at 8:15 sharp.
He was 58, a veteran investigative journalist with the Chicago Tribune. I'd known Frank for 15 years, ever since he'd written a piece on small businesses surviving the 2008 crash. He'd featured Bright Path Solutions back when Ellen was still alive. Frank was a bulldog when he smelled a story, and he had a reputation for taking down corrupt businessmen. "You sounded rattled on the phone, Henry," Frank said, pouring himself coffee from the carafe. "What's going on?" I slid my phone across the table, the screen showing the first photo I'd taken. Tax evasion scheme, $8.5 million. Frank's eyes widened. He scrolled through the images, his jaw tightening with each swipe. Shell companies, fake invoices, offshore accounts. He looked up at me, his expression grave. "This is Pulitzer-level stuff, Henry. Your son and this Rachel woman, they've been running a major fraud operation. How'd you get these?" I told him about the safe, the late-night break-in, Walt's help. Frank nodded slowly. "We need to verify everything. Bank records, corporate filings, cross-reference these shell companies. Give me 10 days. If this checks out, I'll run it. Front page." My phone buzzed as Frank made notes. It was Walt. I stepped outside into the cold morning air to take the call. "Mr. Collins?" Walt's voice was low, urgent. "You need to see something. I was reviewing last week's security footage for my logs. There's video of your son and that Thornton woman, after hours, and his office. They were, he paused, uncomfortable. "They were intimate, sir. And there's more. I saw them shredding documents at 2 in the morning last Thursday, the night before you came in." My grip tightened on the phone. "Can you copy that footage?" Walt hesitated. "I could lose my job. Pensions at stake." "I understand," I said. "But Walt, this is bigger than us." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Okay, I'll put it on a USB drive. Meet me at the Starbucks on State Street, noon tomorrow. And Mr. Collins, be careful. These people play dirty." I went back inside, my appetite gone. Frank was still studying the photos. "We've got more," I said. "Security footage. Walt's getting it for me." Frank's eyes gleamed. "This keeps getting better, or worse, depending on how you look at it." That evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Diane Foster standing on my porch, her coat pulled tight against the wind. Diane was 62, a senior consultant I'd hired 8 years ago. She'd been one of the best until Brandon fired her 6 months back. "Henry," she said, her voice shaking, "I'm so sorry." I let her in, made tea, and we sat at my kitchen table. "Diane, why did Brandon really fire you?" I asked. She looked down at her cup. "I questioned an invoice. It was from some company called Miller Holdings, billing us for consulting services we never received. $200,000. When I pushed back, Rachel called me into her office. She said I wasn't a team player. A week later, I was gone. Do you have proof?" Diane reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. "Emails," she said. 7 of them. I CC'd myself before they wiped my account. It shows Rachel ordering me to approve fake invoices. When I refused, she documented me for insubordination." Her hands trembled. "Henry, I'm not the only one. Brandon's fired 7 people in the last year. All of us asked too many questions. He replaced us with Rachel's people, loyal to her, not the company." I took the folder, my anger building. "Diane, would you testify to this, if it came to it?" She met my eyes, and I saw steel there. "Absolutely. That woman destroyed my career. I want justice." Over the next 2 days, I built my case. Frank's investigation was underway. Walt delivered the USB drive with footage of Brandon and Rachel's affair and their late-night document shredding. Diane's emails proved retaliation against whistleblowers. I had documents, footage, and testimonies, everything I needed to destroy them. 3 days later, my phone rang. Brandon's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my heart steady. "Hello, son." His voice was ice cold, stripped of any pretense. "Dad, we need to talk. I know what you took from my office." My blood ran cold. How did he know? "And I know you've been talking to people," Brandon continued. "This ends now. Meet me tomorrow or you'll regret it." The line went dead. How did Brandon know? That question haunted me all night. I'd been so careful. But the next morning, I got my answer. Frank called at 7 a.m., his voice tight. "Henry, I did some digging. BrightPath installed new security cameras in executive offices 3 months ago. Hidden ones, motion-activated, infrared. If you went into Brandon's office Thursday night, they've got you on tape." My stomach dropped. I'd walked right into their trap. Within hours, I knew they were moving against me. The black sedan I'd seen that night, it was parked across from my house now, bold as brass. I wrote down the plate number and called a buddy who still worked at the DMV. 20 minutes later, he called back. Registered to Vaughn Security Services, private investigators out of Naperville, expensive ones. I was being followed everywhere, to the grocery store, to the bank, even to Ellen's grave at Oakwood Cemetery. They wanted me to know I was being watched. Intimidation, pure and simple. But I'd faced worse in the Navy. I wasn't about to back down now. That night, I made sure all my evidence was backed up. I uploaded the photos to 3 different cloud services, sent copies to Frank, to Diane, even to my cousin in Milwaukee. If something happened to me, the truth would still get out. It was a good thing I did. 2 in the morning, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. My heart hammered as I grabbed my phone and rolled out of bed. Footsteps downstairs, heavy boots on my hardwood floor. I dialed 911, whispering my address to the dispatcher. Then I opened my nightstand drawer. Inside was Ellen's pistol, a Colt 1911 from World War II. It had belonged to her father, and she'd kept it cleaned and loaded. Just in case, she'd always said. I crept to the bedroom door, the pistol heavy in my shaking hands. Downstairs, I could hear them ransacking my office, drawers slamming, papers scattering. "Stay on the line, sir," the dispatcher said. "Units are 3 minutes out." Those were the longest 3 minutes of my life. Finally, I heard sirens. The footsteps below went silent, then rushed. My back door slammed open. By the time I got downstairs, they were gone. My office looked like a tornado had hit it. Desk drawers dumped, file cabinet pried open, my laptop gone. But the joke was on them. Everything they wanted was in the cloud, untouchable. The police came, took my statement, dusted for prints. They found nothing. "Professional job," the officer said. "Probably hired muscle. You got enemies, Mr. Collins?" "More than I thought," I replied. After they left, I sat in my living room as the sun came up. Exhaustion pressed down on me like a weight. My laptop was gone. My home had been violated. My own son had sent thugs to terrorize me. I looked at Ellen's pistol, still in my hand, and a dark thought crept in. What was the point of all this? I'd lost Ellen 3 years ago. Now I was losing Brandon, if I'd ever really had him. The company was poison. Maybe I should just let it all go. I set the pistol on the coffee table and put my head in my hands. "I'm tired, Ellen," I whispered to the empty room. "I don't know if I can do this." That's when I saw it. Ellen's Bible, sitting on the bookshelf where it always sat. I hadn't opened it since her funeral. Something pulled me to it now. I took it down, the leather cover worn smooth from her hands. It fell open to a page marked with a faded ribbon. Psalm 37, verse 7. And there, in Ellen's handwriting in the margin, was a note. "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Justice will come, my love. Don't give up." The date beside it was March 18th, 3 years ago, 2 days before she died. Tears blurred my vision. She'd known. Even then, dying in that hospital bed, she'd known I'd need this. I wiped my eyes, my resolve hardening. I wasn't giving up. Not now. Not ever. I picked up my phone and called Maggie Chen. She was a lawyer, 55 years old, and the daughter of Ellen's best friend from church. "Maggie, I need your help," I said when she answered. "It's time to fight back legally. Come to my house. Bring everything you need to file a lawsuit." She arrived 2 hours later, her briefcase in hand. I showed her everything: the photos of the financial documents, Walt's security footage, Diane's emails, Ellen's will, and the incorporation papers. Maggie read through it all, her eyes getting wider with each page. When she finished, she looked up at me. "Henry, this changes everything. Ellen's will gives you legal standing. You own 50% of BrightPath through her shares. Brandon can't fire you without board approval, and according to these bylaws, he doesn't have the votes." She tapped the incorporation papers. "Plus, with this evidence of fraud, we can sue for wrongful termination, fiduciary breach, and about 6 other things. We file tomorrow morning, Cook County Courthouse."
Relief flooded through me. Finally, I was going on offense. But as Maggie packed up her briefcase, I glanced out my window. The black sedan was back, idling at the curb. And this time, I could see the driver. He was staring right at my house, his phone pressed to his ear. They knew we were coming. Maggie Chen didn't waste time. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, she filed the lawsuit at Cook County Courthouse. Wrongful termination, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud conspiracy, and about 8 other charges that made the clerk's eyes widen. The legal basis was solid as bedrock. Ellen's last will and testament proved I owned 50% of BrightPath Solutions through her shares. The company bylaws, signed back in 1995, stated clearly that no partner could be terminated without a unanimous board vote. Brandon had fired me unilaterally. He'd broken the law the moment those words left his mouth. By Tuesday afternoon, the lawsuit was public record. Frank Morrison's article hit the Chicago Tribune's website at 3 p.m. The headline read, "BrightPath Solutions founder alleges fraud, wrongful termination by son." The story laid out everything: the shell companies, the $8.5 million in hidden revenue, the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. BrightPath stock, traded on the NASDAQ, dropped 18% in 2 hours. Wednesday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Mr. Collins," a smooth male voice said. "My name is James Hartwell. I represent Rachel Thornton and Brandon Collins. We'd like to discuss a settlement. Get it over with before this gets uglier for everyone involved." "I'm listening," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "We're prepared to offer $2 million, cash, and full retirement benefits. In exchange, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and drop the lawsuit. You walk away clean, we walk away clean. Everyone wins." $2 million? It was more money than I'd see in 5 lifetimes. Enough to live comfortably, travel, donate to charity. All I had to do was stay quiet about my son's crimes. I closed my eyes, seeing Ellen's face. "Your word is your bond, Henry." She'd said that 1,000 times. "I'll think about it," I told Hartwell, and hung up. But I already knew my answer. That afternoon, Brandon called. His voice was different, softer, almost pleading. "Dad, can we meet? Just you and me. No lawyers, no Rachel. I need to talk to you. Father to son." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Millennium Park, 6 p.m. The park was beautiful that evening. Autumn leaves scattered across the walking paths, the bean sculpture reflecting the orange sunset. I sat on a bench near the pavilion, my coat pulled tight against the November wind. Brandon arrived 10 minutes late, walking slowly. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his expensive suit rumpled. His hands shook as he sat down beside me. "Dad," he started, his voice cracking, "I've made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. I know that now." He ran a hand through his hair. "I got in over my head with Rachel. She pushed me, told me we needed to be aggressive, cut corners. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted your judgment. I watched him, my heart torn. This was my boy, the kid I'd taught to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, the young man I'd walked through his first job interview. Part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to pull him close and tell him we'd figure it out together. "I'm sorry, Dad," Brandon continued, and tears welled in his eyes. "Let's settle this. Take the money, retire, enjoy your life. Family shouldn't fight in court. Mom wouldn't want this." He was using Ellen against me now, and it stung. I opened my mouth to respond, but then I heard it. A faint voice, tinny and distant. Brandon's phone in his coat pocket. The screen was lit. He'd pocket-dialed someone? Or, wait, my blood went cold. The call was active. He'd called someone before sitting down, and the line was still open. The voice came again, clearer now. "Is he buying it?" A woman's voice. "Rachel. Stick to the script, Brandon. $2 million and the NDA. Don't let him negotiate." Brandon's face went white. He fumbled for his phone, but it was too late. I'd heard everything. I stood up, my coffee cup tumbling from the bench, brown liquid spilling across the concrete. "You're not my son anymore, Brandon." My voice was steady, but my heart was shattered. His face went pale as snow. "Dad, wait, it's not what you think," he stammered, reaching for my arm. I pulled away. This was never about reconciliation. It was about shutting me up. I looked him in the eye, and I didn't recognize the man staring back. "You and Rachel deserve each other. See you in court." I walked away, my shoes crunching leaves. Behind me, Brandon called out, but I didn't turn back. This was war now, and I was going to win. December 14th, 9 a.m. Cook County Courthouse stood like a monument to justice, its limestone columns gray against the winter sky. I climbed the steps slowly, my hand gripping the cold rail. Maggie Chen walked beside me, her briefcase heavy with evidence. Inside, the courtroom smelled of old wood and tension. Reporters filled the back rows, their cameras ready. This wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. It was a public reckoning. Judge Caroline Mitchell presided, a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. She banged her gavel at 9:15 sharp. "This court is now in session. Collins versus Collins and Bright Path Solutions. Counselors, present your opening statements."
Maggie stood, her voice clear and strong. "Your Honor, this case is about betrayal. Henry Collins and his late wife Ellen founded Bright Path Solutions 28 years ago. They built it from nothing, working 16-hour days, sacrificing everything. 3 years ago, Ellen Collins passed away from cancer. Her will left her 50% ownership stake to her husband. Under company bylaws, Henry Collins cannot be terminated without a full board vote. Yet on November 6th of this year, his son Brandon Collins fired him illegally. But that's just the beginning. We will prove that Brandon Collins and Rachel Thornton have been running a massive fraud scheme, evading $8.5 million in taxes through offshore shell companies." The courtroom buzzed. Judge Mitchell banged her gavel. "Order. Continue, Miss Chen." Maggie pulled out her first exhibit, Ellen Collins' last will and testament, dated March 10th, 3 years ago. She passed the document to the judge. "As you'll see, Your Honor, Ellen Collins explicitly left her shares to Henry. This makes him majority stakeholder. He cannot be fired. Period." Brandon's lawyer, James Hartwell, stood up, a slick man in his 40s with a $2,000 suit. "Objection, Your Honor. The plaintiff was terminated for cause, not ownership disputes. He was impeding company progress, refusing to approve legitimate contracts." Judge Mitchell looked at Maggie. "Your response." Maggie smiled. "We'll get to those so-called legitimate contracts, Your Honor. I think the court will find them very interesting." She pulled out the next exhibit: tax documents, ledgers, and invoices. Over the next hour, Maggie methodically destroyed Brandon and Rachel's defense. She showed the shell companies: Miller Holdings, incorporated in the Cayman Islands; Thornton Capital, LLC, registered in Delaware with a fake address; RWT Consulting Services, operating out of the British Virgin Islands. Each company had billed BrightPath Solutions for consulting services that never happened. Fake invoices totaling $8.5 million over 4 years. The money was then transferred offshore, hidden from the IRS. Maggie displayed bank statements, wire transfers, corporate filings. The paper trail was ironclad. Then came the witnesses. Diane Foster took the stand first, her hand steady on the Bible as she swore to tell the truth. Diane was 62, her gray hair pulled back, her eyes fierce. Maggie questioned her gently. "Miss Foster, how long did you work at BrightPath Solutions?" 8 years, Diane replied. "I was a senior consultant until Brandon Collins fired me in June." "Why were you terminated?" Diane's jaw tightened. "I questioned an invoice. It was from Miller Holdings, billing us $200,000 for consulting work we never received. When I pushed back, Rachel Thornton called me into her office. She said I wasn't a team player. A week later, I was gone." Maggie presented Diane's emails as evidence. Documented retaliation against a whistleblower. Next, Walt Johnson took the stand. The old security guard looked uncomfortable in his Sunday suit, but his testimony was devastating. Maggie played the security footage on the courtroom's big screen. There, in grainy black and white, were Brandon and Rachel, in his office after midnight, wrapped in each other's arms. The courtroom gasped, but it got worse. The footage cut to a week later, 2 a.m. Brandon and Rachel at the industrial shredder, feeding documents into it. Page after page after page. "What were they shredding, Mr. Johnson?" Maggie asked. Walt shrugged. "I don't know for certain, ma'am, but I know they were in a hurry. And I know Mr. Collins, Brandon's father, had questioned some financial reports that same week." The implication was clear: destruction of evidence. James Hartwell fought back hard. He put Rachel on the stand, and she was smooth as silk at first. "This is a witch hunt," she said, her voice controlled. "Henry Collins was terminated because he refused to modernize. We run a competitive business, Your Honor. We can't afford to be stuck in the past." But under Maggie's cross-examination, Rachel started to crack. "Miss Thornton," Maggie said, holding up an invoice, "can you explain why Miller Holdings, a company you're listed as secretary for, billed BrightPath $300,000 in August of 2022? Rachel's eyes flickered. "That was for legitimate consulting services." "Really?" Maggie pulled out corporate records. "Because according to the Cayman Islands registry, Miller Holdings has no employees, no office, no phone number. It's a shell company, Miss Thornton, and you created it." Rachel's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Her story was falling apart. Then Maggie pulled out her final weapon: Ellen's original incorporation documents from 1995, signed by Henry and Ellen Collins, co-founders, equal partners, 50-50 ownership. "This company was built on their sweat and sacrifice," Maggie said, her voice ringing through the courtroom. "And these two," she pointed at Brandon and Rachel, "tried to steal it and destroy the man who made it all possible." The judge called a 15-minute recess. As I stood to stretch my legs, Brandon approached me in the hallway. His face was pale, his eyes desperate. "Dad, please," he whispered, grabbing my arm. "Tell them the truth tomorrow. Admit you were interfering with business. I'll ask the judge for leniency on everything else. Just, please, don't do this to me." I looked at him, and for a moment I saw the boy he used to be.
Then I saw Rachel watching us from across the hall, her eyes cold, calculating. She shook her head slightly, a command. Brandon saw it too. His grip on my arm loosened. He looked at Rachel, then back at me. His face hardened. "Never mind," he said, and walked away. My son had made his choice. Day 2 of the trial started with Brandon on the stand. His lawyer had convinced him it was his only shot: throw Rachel under the bus and save himself. James Hartwell led him through the testimony carefully. "Mr. Collins, whose idea was it to create these offshore accounts?" Brandon's voice was quiet. "Rachel's. She said it was standard practice, that all big companies did it. I trusted her." "Did you knowingly evade taxes?" Brandon shook his head. "Not at first. By the time I realized what was happening, we were in too deep. She said if we came clean, we'd both go to prison. I was scared." He looked at the jury, his eyes pleading. "I made terrible mistakes, but I was manipulated. Rachel Thornton is the real criminal here." In the gallery, Rachel's face went red with fury. Her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, but she shook him off. "Liar!" she hissed, loud enough for the front rows to hear. Judge Mitchell's gavel cracked like thunder. "Miss Thornton, control yourself or I'll hold you in contempt." Then it was Maggie's turn. She stood slowly, holding a single sheet of paper. "Mr. Collins, you claim you were manipulated, but you fired your father, didn't you?" Brandon swallowed hard. "Yes." "That was your decision alone?" He nodded. "And you called him an old man? Told him progress doesn't care about his sacrifices?" Brandon's face went pale. I was angry. He was blocking the Miller contract." Maggie's voice sharpened. "The same Miller contract that was completely fraudulent, correct? The one that would have netted you personally $400,000 in kickbacks?" Brandon's mouth opened and closed. No answer came. Maggie stepped closer. "Let me show you something, Mr. Collins." She held up the paper. "Do you recognize this?" Brandon squinted at it. His face crumbled. That's from my mom." Maggie's voice softened, but her words cut deep. "This is a letter Ellen Collins wrote to you on your 10th birthday, September 4th, 1995. Would you like to read it to the court?" Brandon shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "No, please." Judge Mitchell leaned forward. "Read it, Mr. Collins." Brandon took the letter with shaking hands. His voice broke on the first words. "My dearest Brandon, today you turn 10 years old. You're growing into such a fine young man. Your father and I are so proud of you." He paused, wiping his eyes. "Always remember, honor your father. He has sacrificed everything for us, for this company, for your future. Promise me you'll never betray him. Promise me you'll make him proud. Love always, Mom."
The courtroom was silent. Even the reporters had stopped typing. Brandon's shoulders shook with sobs. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Dad, I'm so sorry." I looked at him from my seat, and my heart broke. He was still my son, even now. But sorry doesn't erase what he'd done. Maggie let the moment hang, then turned to the judge. "The prosecution rests, Your Honor." The defense tried to rally. They called character witnesses, financial experts, who claimed the offshore accounts were legal gray areas. But the jury had seen enough. After 3 hours of closing arguments, Judge Mitchell sent them to deliberate. We waited in a small room down the hall. Maggie reviewed her notes. Diane brought me coffee. The clock ticked louder than it should. 2 hours passed, then 3. Finally, at 4:30 p.m., the bailiff knocked. "Jury's back." The courtroom filled quickly. I sat in the front row, my hands folded, Ellen's photo in my coat pocket. The jury filed in, their faces unreadable. The foreman, a woman in her 50s, stood when the judge asked for the verdict. In the matter of wrongful termination, we find in favor of the plaintiff, Henry Collins. In the matter of fraud and tax evasion, we find the defendants, Brandon Collins and Rachel Thornton, guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters rushed for the doors. Judge Mitchell banged her gavel repeatedly. "Order! Order in this court!" Sentencing was immediate. Rachel Thornton, 7 years in federal prison, plus $8.5 million in restitution and fines. Brandon Collins, 4 years in federal prison, plus restitution. Ownership of Bright Path Solutions is hereby restored to Henry Collins, with full authority to manage or dissolve the company as he sees fit. 2 bailiffs moved forward with handcuffs. Rachel stood stiffly, her face a mask of rage. She didn't look at anyone. But Brandon turned as they cuffed him. His eyes found mine across the courtroom. "Dad," he mouthed, the words silent but desperate. "Please." I looked away. I couldn't watch them take him. Outside, the courthouse steps were chaos. Reporters shoved microphones in my face. "Mr. Collins, how do you feel? Are you satisfied with the verdict? Will you rebuild Bright Path?" I pushed past them, Maggie running interference. My truck was parked 2 blocks away, and I walked fast, my head down. Inside the cab, I sat in silence. The steering wheel was cold under my hands. I'd won. Justice had been served. Brandon and Rachel were going to prison. I had my company back. But as I sat there, watching people rush past on the sidewalk, I felt nothing. No joy, no satisfaction. Just emptiness. I'd destroyed my son to save my dignity. Was it worth it? Ellen's voice whispered in my memory. "Justice isn't about feeling good, Henry. It's about doing what's right." I started the engine and drove home through the gathering dark.
3 weeks after the verdict, I sat at the head of the conference table at Bright Path Solutions, the same table where Brandon had fired me, the same room where my humiliation had begun. But now the faces looking back at me were different. The board of directors, what was left of them, waited for me to speak. I'd called this emergency meeting for one reason: to tell them I was shutting it all down. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady, "Bright Path Solutions was built on a lie. My son and Rachel Thornton turned my wife's dream into a criminal enterprise. I won't profit from that. I won't rebuild on that foundation. Effective immediately, I'm dissolving the company. We'll liquidate all assets, pay every employee severance, and close the doors permanently." The room went silent. One board member, a man named Patterson, cleared his throat. "Henry, the company's worth $14 million after debts. Are you sure about this?" I nodded. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Some things can't be saved. They need to be let go. The liquidation took 2 months. We sold the office building, the equipment, the client contracts. Every employee got 3-month severance, more than the law required. Diane helped me coordinate it all, making sure no one was left behind. By mid-February, Bright Path Solutions was gone, dissolved, a chapter closed. But I wasn't done. On March 10th, the 3rd anniversary of Ellen's death, I stood in the offices of Chicago Community Trust. My lawyer had drawn up the papers. The Ellen Collins Memorial Scholarship Fund. $10 million invested in a permanent endowment. The returns would fund scholarships every year, forever, for kids who couldn't afford college, kids who wanted to study business like Ellen and I had dreamed of doing when we were young and broke. The first recipient was a girl named Maria Santos. She was 18, the daughter of Bright Path's cleaning lady, the same woman who'd nearly caught me that night in Brandon's office. Maria had graduated top of her class from a Southside high school. She wanted to study accounting at University of Illinois, but her family couldn't afford it. Now, because of Ellen, she could. I met Maria at the scholarship ceremony. She shook my hand, her eyes bright with tears. "Mr. Collins, thank you. You don't know what this means. My mom, she cleaned offices her whole life so I could have better. Now I can make her proud." I smiled, thinking of Ellen. "You already have, Maria. You already have." That afternoon, I drove to Oakwood Cemetery. The sky was gray, threatening snow, but I didn't mind. I walked the familiar path to Ellen's grave. The headstone, simple and elegant. Ellen Marie Collins, beloved wife and mother, 1953 to 2021. I knelt down, the cold seeping through my pants, and placed something at the base of the stone. Maria's scholarship certificate, sealed in plastic to protect it from the weather.
"We did it, honey," I whispered. "Your legacy is going to help 50 kids a year. Kids like Maria, kids who deserve a shot." I touched the headstone, the granite cold, but somehow comforting. Brandon's in prison, Rachel too. The company's gone, but something good came from all this pain. You'd be proud. Snow began to fall, light flakes drifting down. I stayed there for a while, just sitting with her. When I finally stood to leave, my phone buzzed, an email notification. The sender made my breath catch. Brandon Collins, sent from his prison email account at the Federal Correctional Institution in Terre Haute, Indiana. I sat in my truck, the heater running, and opened it. "Dad," it began, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know I'm using this time to become the man you and Mom raised me to be. I've enrolled in classes. I'm working in the prison library. I'm reading Mom's Bible, the one you sent me. Psalm 37, the one she marked for you. I understand now what I threw away. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, but I'm sorry. I love you, Dad. I always will. Your son, Brandon." I sat there, snow piling on the windshield, and read it 3 times. I didn't reply, not yet. Maybe someday, maybe not. But I saved the email, because despite everything, he was still my son. And maybe, years from now, there could be something to rebuild. Not a company, just a relationship. That was enough. I drove home as the sun set over Chicago, the skyline glowing orange and gold. The fight was over, justice was done, and a new chapter was beginning. So what did I learn from all of this? Sitting here now, 6 months after that courtroom verdict, I've had time to think, time to process what happened. And I want to share something with you, because maybe you're facing your own betrayal. Maybe someone you trusted, someone you loved, has turned on you. Maybe you're wondering if fighting back is worth it. Here's what I know. Revenge isn't justice. Revenge is about hurting someone because they hurt you. It's personal, it's emotional, and it leaves you empty. But justice? Justice is about standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. Even when it means facing down your own son in a courtroom. I didn't destroy Brandon because I hated him. I did it because he broke the law, betrayed everything his mother and I taught him, and needed to face consequences. Ellen used to say, "Your word is your bond." In her generation, in my generation, that meant something. A handshake was a contract. Your reputation was worth more than money in the bank. Somewhere along the way, we lost that. We started teaching our kids that success means wealth, no matter how you get it, that cutting corners is smart business, that loyalty is for suckers. I'm here to tell you that's a lie. Integrity matters. Character matters. Doing the right thing, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, that's what defines us. I also learned that love doesn't mean enabling bad behavior.
I loved Brandon, I still do, but loving him didn't mean protecting him from the consequences of his choices. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone fall, let them hit bottom so they can finally learn to stand on their own. My son is in prison right now, and part of me breaks every day knowing that. But another part of me hopes he's becoming the man Ellen believed he could be. Legacy is more important than wealth. I could have taken that $2 million settlement, signed the non-disclosure agreement, and lived comfortably. But what would that have taught the next generation? That crime pays if you're rich enough? That family means covering up lies? No. By shutting down BrightPath and creating Ellen's scholarship fund, I turned something rotten into something good. 50 kids a year will get an education because of what happened. That's a legacy worth having. And finally, I learned that standing up for yourself, defending your dignity, is never too late. I'm 70 years old. A lot of people told me to let it go, to enjoy my retirement, to not make waves. But Ellen taught me better. She told me, don't let anyone steal your dignity, not even our son. She was right. Age doesn't mean you stop fighting for what's right. It means you've got the wisdom to know what's worth fighting for. If you're watching this and you've been betrayed, if you've been wronged, I want you to know something. You're not alone. Justice is possible, but it takes courage, it takes sacrifice, and it takes the willingness to stand alone if you have to. If this story touched you, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button for John's Revenge Stories. Click the bell so you don't miss future stories. And down in the comments, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? Share your story. Let's learn from each other. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's struggling with betrayal or injustice, share this video with them. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, the hardest battles are often against those we love. But standing for truth, protecting your dignity, honoring the values you were raised with, that's what defines us. Not our bank accounts, not our titles, our character. God bless you all, and remember what Ellen always said, your word is your bond. Live by that, and you'll never go wrong.